yes or no only. And if you want to explain, you can explain it. And if you want to say pass, kung ayaw mo sagutin, okay lang din. Para just to break the monotony of yung pagiging seryoso masyado nitong ating interview. Okay? Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Game na game si Attorney Luke. Okay. Number one, first question. Wala raw ho kayong sariling kotse.
Yes.
Yes. Wow. At his status.
I
wala
sold my car to pay for the tuition of my kids.
Second, do you pray? Nagdadasal ka?
Well,
Yes or
depends
no?
it really depends. It really depends. It really depends.
Okay.
I still do maybe the equivalent of prayer. Like
Okay.
reflecting.
Okay. Meditation.
Meditation,
Okay.
something like that. It helps me
Okay.
in my
Yeah.
before I
Everybody
begin
should.
my day.
Everybody should.
And
Diba?
that's like the equivalent of prayer because
Okay.
prayer is meditation,
Of course,
self-reflection.
yes. Okay.
Yes.
They say that when you say nothing, you say it not. I mean, you say it nothing. You say it best when you say nothing at all.
Yes.
Diba? Oh, another question, Attorney Luke. Right after the senatorial debate, did you shake hands with the other senatoriables?
Our difference is too much
Okay.
that I will not be honest to myself if I approach them to shake hands with them.
But what
But
if they approach you?
Yes, I will be a human being to them,
Uh-uh.
and I will be respectful to them. If they approach me, then I will also,
I also heard from one of your interviews like you have heated debates also. I mean, in the court, and then after arguing or explaining, you'll call each other as pañeros.
it's not personal. Even the fact that I don't want to approach them, it's not personal. It's political. I don't hate them as human beings, as people.
Political.
It's political, and the differences are political, and it doesn't urge me to go to them
To reach
as if
out, yes.
chami-chami kami.
Yes,
Diba?
yes, but it's not.
Pero
it's not you.
magiging tao rin naman ako sa kanila kung lumapit sila sa akin.
And then after the interview, after that event, you had an ambush interview wherein you said, and I quote, like, bitin pa ako sa banata na ito. Saan ka nabitin?
Kasi doon sa
Kulang pa.
explain. Kasi ayaw naman natin, sinasabi ko sa kanila, ayoko kasi na isipin nila, galit lang ako kay Marcos eh. Parang personality politics lang ba? Kailangan napapaliwanag natin kung bakit. Kung bakit si Marcos ay hindi golden age yan. Na bakit natin sinasabing matindi ang kanyang human rights violations.
That's right.
Tulad halimbawa, nung sinabi ni Harry Roque na ibahin natin si Bongbong na anak dun sa tatay. It's as if he's already admitting, well,
Yes,
loko-loko
yes,
yung tatay.
Pero ito iba.
Diba? Pero ito iba.
Patay na yun,
Diba?
ito buhay.
Without saying it. So
Yes.
I'm saying it's mental dishonesty. Why don't you just say sira ulo yung tatay?
That's right.
Right? To first provide the premise,
Yeah.
and then so that you could describe how is the son different from the father. Kasi kapag ganyan, ka-vague, nang-mislead ka na noon. Mental dishonesty yun eh. Nag-acrobatics ka.
That's
You're
right.
trying to skirt things.
That's
Sabihin mo muna, masama ang tatay.
That's
Para
right.
meron kang pundasyon para sabihin, iba yung anak.
That's right.
But then I would like to explain also, kaya hindi ako, nagre-raise ako ng hand para i-rebut eh. Hindi naman ako tinatawag. So, talagang bitin. Pero sa totoo lang, di ba, kasing guilty ang anak sa tatay. Kasi pag pinag-usapan ng human rights violation, hindi naman isang tao yan eh. Hindi lang naman natin sinasabing si Marcos Sr. ang pumatay sa lahat ng mga yun, tumorture sa lahat ng mga yun. It was an entire regime, an entire machinery that created yung mga imprisonment, torture, rape, at killings, disappearances. Entire regime, systematic, people conspiring in order to create a situation wherein human rights are no longer respected. And if you are part of that regime, you are guilty as well. Because you are a part of a machine that created that. So Bongbong Marcos cannot be differentiated from the father.
Partner in crimes. Yan po ang pinakamahabang yes na natanggap ko kay Attorney
Sorry.
Luke.
Was it what? No, I forgot
Carried
that I
away.
was
Carried
limited
away.
to just
Next
answer
question,
yes or no.
Attorney Luke. Do you have a bad temper?
No.
Wala.
No.
Which leads me to the next question. Sino napikon sa inyo? Ikaw o si Attorney Gadon that time?
It was not about pikon. I don't know with him. But it was not about being pikon.
Oo.
It was about standing your ground.
Yes,
Now, when you stand
yes.
your ground, you do not have to be irritated.
Yes.
And
yes,
you don't
yes.
have to be temperamental.
Well, because of the other camp was saying napikon, ill-tempered, blah, 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 blah. Pero I myself, when I watched it, it wasn't you. Not because you're in front of me, but it wasn't you. You're just really standing on your ground.
Yeah, standing my ground.
At totoo rin po ba na pinapatayan ka ng microphone?
Oo, totoo yun. Sa loob ng Okada. Sa labas, naririnig eh. Kasi later on ko na lang nalaman.
Oo.
Kasi dun sa mga recording na pinapalabas sa Facebook. So, hindi pala namatay. Pero sa loob, pinapatayan talaga ako dun. Because my contingent na nagdala ko ng 12 people from my team.
Apostles.
Andun din si Calyodi.
Oh.
Hindi nila narinig yung sinasabi ko. Kasi
Yung mga
sa loob
rebuttals
pinapatay
mo.
nila. Oo.
Okay. Good.
Kaya makikita mo, ginaganon ko yung mic eh.
That's right. And then, are you also in favor of giving questions ahead of time before a debate?
No. Bakbakan tayo, di ba? Hindi pwedeng, alam mo na, parang cheating yan eh, sa exam yan eh.
That's right. Di ba? Kodigo, di ba?
Oo, may kodigo ka eh, di ba? Hindi pwede.
At ikaw ba'y naniniwala? Are you convinced that 500 pesos were given out during a sortie of VP Lenny, which happens to be the biggest crowd, and that was in Cavite?
I don't know, I cannot say. But I do know na yung other camp, Bongbong Marcos, kasi some people give me information na dun sa barangay, merong mga card, ATM card na dinidistribute na yan daw ang paglalagyan ng pera. That's based on the reports that I gather from people who voluntarily give me information. At nothing of that sort na narinig ko about VP Lenny's.
At naniniwala din po ba kayo sa sinasabi po nila na ang kasalanan ng ama ay hindi dapat kasalanan ng anak?
Hindi nga eh. Kasi yun nga explanation ko eh. Part siya ng regime eh. Di ba? Hindi po pwedeng hugas kamay siya doon. Kasi buong rehimen naman yung nag-produce ng kasalanan na yon, hindi lang isang tao. So, he was governor of Ilocos at the time. He was very, very much part of the regime.
And they also agree of a certain wannabe politician said that BBM shouldn't apologize at all for the sins of his father.
Hindi nga, ayun nga ang problem eh, yung framing na sins of the father. I challenge that framing. Well, primary, really, father, yes, siya yung presidente. Pero it was not only the sins of the father, it's as if personal ba? Ano yung tao? Isang tao lang ba to? Diba? Pwede ba naman niya magawa yung kanyang kahindik-hindik ng mga krimen? Bilyong-bilyon ng mga nawala sa public treasury? Libo-libong mga namatay, isang tao lang siya. So it's not about the sins of the father. The sins of the regime of which you are part of. Dapat mag-sorry ka doon. Diba? Pero hindi lang naman sorry yan.
Correct.
You have to be, kailangan.
May action din, di ba?
Hindi lang. Dapat napagbayaran mo.
Correct. May action magbayad.
Justice tayo, di ba?
Pero ang tanong ko, a follow-up question on that, along that note, bakit marami pa rin tao na nagbubulag-bulagan at nagbibingi-bingihan na akala nila lahat niya ito ay fake news?
Kasi maraming ang
Trolls.
Maraming ang billions at their disposal.
Okay.
At talagang laganap ang fake news.
Okay.
Bilyon-bilyon pa naman fake news Talagang magbe-brainwash ka nun. It's manufacturing consent. They're in the business of manufacturing consent through fake news and illusory promises. So yan ang result. Diba? But I will always say, yung support na generate mo dyan, out sa lies na pinepedal mo, ang support na yan ay shallow.
Mm.
Shallow yan kasi kasinungalingan eh.
Yes.
Di ba? In fact, it betrays your own desperation. Why? Because you really cannot offer anything.
Mhm.
Kaya ka nga nagpe-fake news eh, kasi sa totoo lang, wala kang na-offer eh.
Mhm.
Di ba? Ganun ka-shallow yung support mo.
Walang panay fake news, walang good news.
Walang good news, walang authentic na pwede niyang maibigay na pwedeng maging acceptable sa lahat.
Yes. Ngayon, para doon naman po sa mga taong binibigyan o sinusuhulan during the campaign period, payag ho ba kayo na tanggapin nila ang pera pero hindi nila iboboto?
Hindi.
Hindi rin.
Hindi. We should make a stand.
Mm-mm.
We should make a stand na
Huwag tumanggap.
tama na itong ganitong klaseng sistema.
Okay.
Mga techniques ng mga trapong yan.
Mhm.
We cannot be Machiavellian about it. There are things that you can be like tactically Machiavellian about it, but this thing, no.
So, ibig sabihin, tama rin po yung sinabi ni Senator Manny Pacquiao na kasi tinatawag siyang bobo at ang sinabi niya, hindi akong bobo. Ang bobo, yung boboto sa magnanakaw.
Well, I do not want to say bobo because hindi ako naniniwala sa bobotante. Hindi totoo yan. I don't want to insult our masses. You know, because they are placed in a situation na sa totoo lang, wala naman silang totoong choice eh. Kahit na naniwala ka sa fake news. Sa tingin ba natin, totoong consent yon? Yung taong naniwala sa fake news, totoong consent niya yon? Or biktima siya ng trickery? Ang totoong consent, informed consent. E biniktima ka ng trickery, ng lies na pinipedal. Therefore, yung makikreate ng fake news is also fake opinion. Di ba? It's not because they're bobo. Di ba?
That's true.
Germans nga nung panahon ni Hitler Di ba? Wala pang mga internet nun. They're the most intelligent people, the most civilized people. They are leading in the arts, in philosophy, in music. And they pride themselves as being the master race. But you put in a machinery, the Nazi machine, and the propaganda ministry of Joseph Goebbels, then you produce human beings na maniniwala sa mga outrageous na claims.
Yes.
And these were outrageous claims ang sinasabi ni Hitler, right?
Yes.
Patently outrageous, but these were believed by these people, educated people. Ganon din yun sa atin. Hindi yan pwedeng i-dismiss na bobo lang sila.
Yes.
Tapos pagdating sa local, alam nyo ba sa tingin ba natin kapag binayaran sila na binili ang kanilang boto, they're just immoral. Immoral lang talaga, kinuha nilang pera, bobotohin. May kaakibat na coercion yan. Alam sa local, kapag hindi mo binoto, yung mayor na nagbigay sa iyo ng pera, alam nila yan Namomonitor nila ang pamilyang to. Hindi sumunod or contras partidos to. Wow. And then what's next? What's next is, haras ka na. Pag pumunta ka ng health center, tingnan lang natin kung makakuha ka ng gamot. Contras partidos yan, bibigyan ba nila ng gamot?
Correct.
Pagdating ng ayuda, ng 4-piece, ng mga bigas,
Correct.
ng mga Christmas package, pag pumunta sila sa barangay, contras partidos yan, hindi yan natin bibigyan. May coercion yan.
Yes.
Kaya wag na nating palaganap yung bobotante na mga kaisipan na ganyan. Ang may kasalanan sa ganyan, yung mga bumibili ng boto, nag-commit ng mga acts para i-coerce ang masa, spreading fear, yung mga nagpapalaganap ng fake news using billions of pesos. At yun ang kailangan palitan natin. Sa kanila ang sisi, hindi sa mga botante.
Ang next question ko po, ang susunod na tanong ko ay para naman doon sa mga artista. Artista na hindi naman talaga handa na sumabok sa politika. Do you approve of that?
Artista,
Yes,
natatakbo.
more on popularity than what they have in their heads.
They take advantage
Of their popularity.
They take advantage of the desperation of the people.
Oo.
When people are desperate, sino ang parang significant sa kanila? Ano ang significant sa kanila? You could feed them lies. Kaya nga kapag desperate ka, madali kang vulnerable ka sa budol-budol You could feed them lies or you could feed them escapist stuff. Para ma-escape nila yung
That's
kanilang
right.
desperation.
Yes.
That's why itong si Harry Roque ay sumayaw. Di ba? To feed escapist
Yes.
forms
Yes.
doon sa mga sa masa. Ganun din ang artista. Kasi kung ang masa na desesperado ay bigyan mo ng escapist na mga
Entertainment.
bagay-bagay,
Oo.
di ba? Like he himself makakapag-provide ng
I know.
escapism.
Yeah.
Kaya namamayagpag. And I don't agree because of that. It's taking advantage of the desperation of the people. And I would just like to say, Brother Adrian, gusto kong maging senador na lang talaga si Harry Roque.
Oo.
Alam mo bakit?
Dahil?
Nagagawa niya yung mga bagay-bagay na hindi ko kayang gawin. Deserve niya. Hindi ko kayang gawin yun eh. Imagine mo yun.
Yeah.
Ba, todo indak.
Oo, hindi lang yon.
Oo.
Oo, nabasa pa yung pants niya. Did
Oo
you
nga
see
eh.
that?
Kaya minsan napaisip ako. Brother Adrian, napaisip ako. Ang hirap pala ng pinasok ko.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Suicide ito.
Dapat maging senador yan.
Yeah.
Di ba?
Pero ikaw ang gusto kong maging senador dahil ikaw ang babakbak sa kanilang
Pero
lahat.
hindi ako gagawa nun, ha, Brother
Alam
Adrian.
ko.
Hindi ko gagawa nun.
Hindi ko nga tinanong sa'yo.
Huwag na ako maging senador, huwag mo lang ako pasayawin.
Hindi ko nga tinanong sa'yo yan, hindi ba? Attorney Luke, sa tingin po ba, we had a poor response, especially nung pagdating ng pandemya sa ating bansa?
Yes, oo. Kasi
Very poor response of the government.
very poor response. May corruption pa, formally. Ginamit yung pandemya na pagkakitaan, di ba, ng mga korap. Ngayon, nasa news, yung suporta sa MSMEs pala ay hindi nila binigay. Nandyan lang, nakatambak lang. Samantalang ang MSMEs natin, hirap na hirap.
Wow.
Nakatambak lang ang bilyon-bilyon na
Wow.
dapat pinautang nila at zero interest.
Wow.
Imagine mo yan.
Yes.
Di ba? So, zero talaga ang marka ng government na to pagdating sa COVID response.
Wow. Do you also believe in surveys?
Parang, alam mo, dati, sinasabi ko, well, in a way, sabihin natin, scientific din yan.
Okay.
Pero hindi siya accurate.
Okay.
Nasa inherent naman yan sa surveys.
Okay.
May scientific method, pero yung result, alam naman natin, hindi accurate. And I would like to add, hindi lang sa hindi siya accurate, inherent yan sa surveys, or hindi lang siya hindi siya accurate. Yan ay does not reflect yung shifts in people's opinions. And that would be very, very fluid. Yung shifts in people's opinions,
Yes.
fluid yan.
Okay.
Kaya hindi ka pwedeng mag-rely sa survey ngayon para
Yes.
sabihing mananalo si Bongbong Marcos.
Correct.
Number one example na dyan, bottom, ako. Walang nakakilala. Pero isang ganon, iglap,
Yes.
nag-viral. Bakit? Kasi maraming galit, milyon. Hindi naman sa akin yun. It's not me.
Yeah.
It's because of the millions of others who are really sick and tired of the trapo system.
That's true.
So kita mo yung pag-manifest kaagad na iba yung
that's true.
yung sitwasyon.
Opo.
We don't know 2 months pa ang elections.
Yes.
Diba?
Ibig sabihin ng fluid, it can change anytime.
Yes, it can
It's
change.
erratic.
Lalong-lalo na, Brother Adrian, kapag ang support mo ay very shallow dahil ito ay nakatungtong sa fake news at very shallow, lalong-lalo na kung
That's
nakatungtong ito sa ATM na pinamumudbud mo,
That's right.
hindi yan firm support.
That's right.
Pumupunta sa sa sortie mo sa assembly mo dahil may ATM
That's right.
or dahil sa fake news
At may ayuda.
at may ayuda di ba kung
Yes.
yung SMNI ilang minuto lang or segundo lang, di ba? Anything can happen.
That's right.
Para yan isang iglap,
Opo. Yes.
umawawala yan. It
That's
will go somewhere else.
That's true. And in fact, 2016, when VP Lenny ran as vice president, she was fourth, actually, in the surveys. But then, she won the race. Hindi po ba?
Kasi shifting nga. Di ba?
Ano rin po ang masasabi po ninyo na alam po natin na may nangyayari o may naganap na merong isang kumakandidato na presidente pero hindi niya dinala ang kanyang ka-team sa isang lugar. Pwede bang mangyari yun?
Parang nahihirapan ako manghula sa sinasabi mo.
Huwag mo
Brother
na hulaan.
Adrian. Sabihin mo na lang sa akin ang pangalan. Upitin mo na lang sa akin para makapagbigay ako ng opinion.
Te-text ko na lang sa'yo.
Text mo na lang. O anong nangyari?
Ang nangyari
Presidential
po ay
candidate.
presidential, hindi niya dinala ang kanyang vice president. dahil hindi sikat yun, Vice President niya.
gusto
Yung
kong
ibang
malaman.
yung ibang Vice President ang dala niya dahil mas sikat yun.
Ako na lang magsalita.
in other words, nilaglag niya yung kanyang Vice
Ako na
President.
lang magsalita.
Bahala po
Isko,
kayo.
Batog, dinala si Sara, ganun ba?
Opo, parang ganun po.
Yun nga, yung
Yun na
pangalan.
yun, oo.
Alam mo,
Pwede,
that's trapo style talagang politika. No?
Oh.
You know, I really sense right now na si Sara Duterte is being parang being developed to be an alternative to Bongbong Marcos. Nga naman, kung titingnan mo nga naman, sabi ko nga sa iyo, shallow ang support kay Bongbong Marcos. Do you think kapag nanalo yan, do you think that support will stand? He promised Taliano Gold. He promised babayaran niya utang ng Pilipinas.
oh my.
He promised na sa isang iglap, mawawala ang kahirapan mo.
Yes.
Sabi, magpalagay natin, maging presidente siya.
Uh-huh.
And ang mabilis pa sa alas 4, it will be proven na goyo tayo. Because he can never pay our utang, there is no Taliano Gold.
That's right.
At sa isang iglap, hindi mawawala ang kahirapan, patuloy ang kahirapan. Pretty quick, his support will be eroded. And if you see that, di ba, nagjujosol na ngayon
That's right.
ng who will be presented as alternative to Bongbong Marcos. Parang isang paa mo nandito, isang paa mo nandun. And if I read Sara Duterte sa kanyang conduct right now, may statement siyang pinapalabas na we should remember why EDSA 1 happened, people power happened. Ba? Bongbong Marcos, Vice President,
Kumakambyo.
parang ina-undermine ang kanyang president.
Oo.
Kung totoo man yan, na sila nagsama ni Isko, aba, okay. Meron akong nakita. What do you say about, may usap-usapan, Lenny Sara. Aba,
Parehong babae.
aba, medyo
Ang tawag nga nila, Rosa.
ang kwan neto, ang pinuposisyon to kasi ito sigurado ako, itong si Marcos, sigurado ako to, hindi to tatagal ang support sa kanya I would just like to warn people.
Yes.
Diba? Tayo ito ngayong nakikipagbakbaka na matigil yan,
That's true.
ang Marcos na yan. Diba? Tayong makikipagbakan. Baka balang araw, pagdating sa bakbakan, nandyan tayo, pero sa last minute, alam mo yon, iba ang nagbayo.
Oh.
Iba ang nagtanim. Iba ang nagbayo.
Nagsaing.
Iba ang nagsaing.
Iba ang kakain.
Sara Duterte ang kumain.
Wag naman.
Tapos tayo dyan.
I rebuke. Diba?
Because the Duterte itself, the Duterte legacy, kinakalaban din natin yan. Huwag natin kalimutan, ha? It's not just Marcos. It's also Duterte. Because Duterte, because Marcos is just a continuation of Duterte. It's the same type of rule that they represent.
That's right.
Kaya baka makalimutan natin later on, di ba? Iba ang kumain, Sara Duterte pala kumain. Huwag natin kalimutan.
Ang tanong din po ng iba, bakit po si Presidente Duterte ay hindi niya ina-acknowledge o hindi niya kinakampanya ang kanyang sariling anak? Tama ba yun o mali?
Parang imposible yata yun na hindi kinakampanya kasi
Directly.
All of these things na nangyayari, yung mga ganyang
Pero
paiba-iba,
subliminal, hindi ba?
nasa
Pailalim.
likod yan
Okay.
Nasa likod
Oo.
na...
Pero totoo po bang hindi po talaga gusto ni Presidente si BBM?
Kasi, I think,
He will never
totoo
endorse.
yun. I think totoo yun. Kasi gusto nga niya yung successor niya.
Okay.
Ikaw si Duterte, pagka hindi ka na presidente, talagang nanganganib ka, di ba? Kasi kukulong ka, may ICC ka,
Of course.
baka mamaya padalhin ka doon sa Geneva, arestuhin ka. Definitely, he wants to secure himself. Therefore, he wants a post-Duterte arrangement which he could at least control. With Bongbong Marcos, being independently charting his own course na hindi kontrolado ni Digong, and even getting the Duterte supporters to his side and to support his own campaign, kasi continuity lang naman yan. Kung DDS ka
Yes.
ngayon, dati, madaling maging Marcos ka ngayon. So, pero hindi niya makontrol ni Duterte yung post-Duterte scenario. Therefore, hindi siya masyadong nagsusuporta dyan.
Oo nga, no? The irony of it, you are saying that this is just a continuity of the Marcos regime, itong Duterte. and yet Duterte doesn't acknowledge BBM or doesn't endorse BBM
He
at
wants
all.
to secure himself.
Aha. Why?
He wants to secure himself.
Bakit po? Pag si BBM po ba ang nakaposisyon, hindi ba siya masisecure?
Mas matitinding kwan pa yan, matitinding negosasyon pa yan. Di ba? Matitinding mga, Marcos could have his own mind. Di ba? Marcos could, have his own...
So you believe he has his own mind then?
Well, in regard to that question, could have.
Oh,
In
could
regard
have.
to
Oh.
Could have.
Okay. And then, I don't know kung how long are we gonna stay here, pero ang dami pang gusto namin malaman at maitanong kay Attorney Luke. Pero as long as I don't receive any signal here from the studio, we continue with the interview. And Attorney Luke, in your heart, is there any hope for the Philippines and for a change in the Philippine politics?
Yes.
There's hope.
I even see the support for Marcos as an indication na discontented na talaga ang masang Pilipino. Nakukuha lang ni Bongbong ang support ng masang Pilipino dahil pinapalamunan niya ng fake news. Pero scratch, behind the surface, makikita mo na may discontent yan, may galit yan. Dahil matagal na silang in-exploit, matagal na silang niloloko. And Duterte was able to use that and exploit that by saying, by taking an anti-oligarchic line and directing that against what he calls the yellows. And saying, ang mga oligarch yan yan ang may kasalanan sa inyong kahirapan. But the masses are angry. So nakuha ni Duterte. And Marcos is now trying to use that same anger and discontent to say na sa isang iglap tatapusin ko yung kahirapan nyo. But then they will all fail.
Yeah, empty promises.
The very same discontent and the very same desperation and anger na inaalagaan nila at ginagamit nila would be the same things
Yes.
that can be used against them, because the masses are really hungry for real change and
That's right.
alternatives.
That's
And that's
right.
why I'm always saying history is on our side.
That's right.
False news, lies, deceit, in the end can never prevail.
That's right.
Diba? Money, vote buying can never prevail
That's
in the end.
right. That's right.
Diba?
There are times that they can get away with it for now, but not for
Not
long.
for all the
not
time,
for long, not
diba?
forever. Okay. Alam po ninyo, Attorney Luke, nakakatuwa because I've never been involved in politics. Hindi ako ganyan ka-interesado because I'm from show business, I'm a singer, and I'm a preacher. It's only now that I'm being pushed and compelled really to be interested in politics. And I couldn't thank you. I couldn't thank VP Lenny Robredo who pushed me into this. Salamat sa itong mga taong ito naging inspirasyon ko. And in fact, I've gained a lot of friends as well. We have different GCs, group chats on Viber and on Messenger na hindi ko kakilala pero ngayon naging magkaibigan kami lahat. And in fact, one of my friends by the name of Jude Cartolaba would like to ask this question, to throw this question to you. And his question is, can you propose ways to integrate into the Philippine education system the horrors of martial law? Ateneo has a virtual museum. Other than that, any concrete means?
Ateneo is a good example of how to develop human beings that respect human rights and even respect social justice. Because liberation theology is being taught in the Ateneo. And it's one of my great influences.
Very good.
That our system is unjust, there are unjust social structures. It's being taught. And the result is, I want to fight for social justice.
Very good.
We should integrate martial law, the horrors behind martial law, so that our young generation can draw the lessons regarding martial law. The right lessons that we should respect human rights, we should promote democracy, we should include the lower segments of our society, and we must not ignore them, ignore their rights, their social, economic, and political rights. That should be taught in our schools. Why? Because martial law is history. The facts cannot be disputed.
That's right.
The numbers cannot be questioned because there are recorded cases of killings, of torture and rape and desaparecido, di ba? And imprisonment. Cannot be disputed. It cannot be disputed, for example, that Marcos arrogated legislative power and made laws by himself. Who could dispute that? But do our schools teach that? It cannot be disputed that that's dictatorial. That is against the principles of democracy. It cannot even be disputed that, our Philippine constabulary or Marcos could just issue arrest, search, and seizure orders.
Yeah.
It's not issued by the judge. They themselves could issue arrest, search, and seizure orders. These are real facts. These constitute history. It should be integrated in our curriculum, in our history subject.
Where were you during the EDSA revolution, by the way?
I was in Bacolod.
Ah, okay.
Yes, I was in Bacolod, and
How-
I remember very well.
How are you feeling that time?
First, I was 11 years old at the time.
Really?
I was 5, yes.
11 years old.
The school suspended classes for the February, I think, 11 elections.
Were you affected by the EDSA revolution? What's
It
happening
was
around?
exciting because, Cory was very popular at the time.
Yeah.
My father was a member of the PDP Laban. She campaigned for Cory, so they brought in campaign materials to our house, and me and my friends would take some posters, stickers, and we roamed around the neighborhood. We also tried to we also tried to participate in our own little way, which is
Okay.
just like playing for us.
In Bacolod?
In Bacolod, distributing, and very much part of it, you feel as if you were part of
Yes,
the
of
changes
course.
that
Yes,
will happen.
yes.
And I remember when watching a TV broadcast of Marcos's inauguration. I think it's in PTV4.
Yeah.
And I remember it was cut.
Ah.
And we didn't know what happened. But there were no broadcasts about the people congregating in EDSA. Then the next thing I knew, I think that's February 25, evening, or 10 or 9 or 10 o'clock, the bells were ringing.
Yeah.
The bells were ringing, from the church. And the word spread, Marcos already flew to Hawaii. And I remember...
That was the real hallelujah that you were saying.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
And I remember when we went out the next day, or we went back to school, people were greeting themselves, Happy New Year.
Amen.
Yes,
Amen.
because it was a new
Yeah,
year.
yes.
And it was really a period of hope
Celebration.
For us, hope.
Yes,
There
yes.
was hope,
Yeah,
and there was promise
that's right.
that everything will change.
That's right.
Yes.
And it's really sad for us who believe in the truth and justice na we are just gonna throw that away, that EDSA experience, di ba?
It should have been completed in the, in the advancement of democracy, not only for a certain section of our society, but it should have been enlarged or spread to the lower sections, our workers, the Filipino masses.
Do you think it didn't happen?
Yeah, it didn't happen. And the power was still monopolized by an elite few. And I think that's the reason why we have a Marcos restoration. Because power was limited to an elite few, and which was responsible for the fact that when Marcos was toppled, his life was actually saved. He was allowed to go to Hawaii by the new government. It was the new government who saved his life. Otherwise, if the mobs were there, who attacked Malacanang, saw him there, we don't know what would have happened to him, right? There would have been revolutionary justice for everything that he did, and we would not talk about Marcos anymore, because when there's revolutionary justice, at least you put into place lessons in history that if you become a dictator, this is what will happen to you. Okay, but it did not happen. His life was spared by the new dispensation. Like several months or 1 year after EDSA, 60 to 80 of the former Marcos officials were voted back into office.
Wow.
5 years after EDSA, the Marcos family were allowed to return. And when they returned, they were allowed to run. In 1992, Imelda ran for president. They became congressmen, governors,
Yeah.
senators,
Yes.
vice president for
Yeah.
Bongbong
Yeah.
Marcos. And all the symbols to EDSA, the EDSA People Power, they coexisted side by side with the symbols to Marcos that were not torn down.
Uh-huh.
And all the Marcos officials sat by side with the newly appointed officials or officials who were appointed during the time of Cory, side by side in Congress, side by side with the Senate. So who made possible the Marcos restoration? It was elite rule. It was elite rule that made it possible because there is not much difference in terms of socio-economic program between them.
Okay.
So that was actually the failure of the promise of EDSA.
Well, another question coming from a good friend and co-preacher of mine by the name of from attorney and attorney's point of view, from attorney Sam Agaloos. China has occupied and has been massively militarizing the disputed islands in the West Philippine Sea that are declared to be part of the Philippines by the UN Arbitral Tribunal. Despite of the decision, the Philippines still challenged to assert its ownership over these areas because of how limited our military capabilities are compared to China. With this challenge, are you in favor of the return of the American naval base here in the Philippines for us to reclaim those islands and to counter the threat of Chinese expansion to West Philippine Sea? How will you approach this issue once you get a Senate seat?
I would like to explain that the Americans never left the Philippines. They relocated their two biggest military installations, Clark and Subic, after the Pinatubo eruptions. And the Senate also did not ratify the renewal of the U.S. bases. But they never left. After that, we had the Visiting Forces Agreement. And the Americans are still here. And we still host American military and weaponry in our country. Not in the same way before that there would be two big installations. But we are pretty much in the ambit or orbit of the United States, the military orbit of the United States. We made possible the presence of the U.S. military in this area of not just Southeast Asia, in this area of Asia, in South China Sea or West Philippine Sea. Now, because of that, and because of the presence of the Seventh Fleet, U.S. Seventh Fleet, China created a defensive perimeter in the West Philippine Sea and invented that 9-dash line. It's actually a defensive perimeter because for them, in their point of view, they feel so vulnerable that from the sea, land invasion is very, very much possible. And they wanted to lengthen the defensive perimeter to protect China. So their presence in the West Philippine Sea is actually defensive in character. We do not condone it. We condemn it.
Yeah.
They're grabbing our portions of our exclusive economic zone.
That's right.
And that should be condemned, and that should be opposed. But we could not divorce it from the context that they feel threatened by the United States, containing them. Containing them from several countries, and Philippines is one. Containing them from Japan, containing them from India, containing them from Korea. China is very much contained. So that's the problem, because it is the rivalry of these two superpowers that affects our claim also to our exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. The real solution would really be for us to struggle or call for the demilitarization of the West Philippine Sea. No to the presence of the Americans, and no to the presence of the Chinese. In fact, we should build some nine-aligned formation because we are affected by the rivalry of these two superpowers. If you go exclusively with the Americans, we would have played into the hands of the Americans, and then the Chinese will counteract by solidifying their position in the West Philippine Sea, and it is our national interest that will be sacrificed.
So we're caught in between.
We're caught
two
in
powers,
between
yeah.
in the same way that Ukraine was caught in between Russia and the Western powers. Russia felt so contained by the Western powers, the NATO powers, that are located along its borders. So it resulted into war. The same policy of containment is being pursued by the United States, containing China. And we already know in history that is a perfect recipe for war. And we should not be drawn into this rivalry, which will lead to war. And we will just be used as pawns.
That's right.
We should chart our own course, have our own independent foreign policy, and in fact talk to our neighbors for us to form a non-aligned movement in this area.
Thank you. And this is the last question coming from a friend and co-preacher, Brother JC Libiran. Ang tanong po niya, paano po mapiprevent ang block voting kung meron man sa Senado, lalo na ang mga magkakaalyado?
Parang wala talagang way na ganyan eh. Kasi per party, it's part of parliamentary system na kung anong partido ay nagvo-vote, it's part of their discipline. Diba? So, wala talaga tayong, parang it's accommodated. It's an accommodated form in our democratic system na sila, nag-uusap-usap sila and they'll just have one vote. In fact, we should even do that against the trapos Dapat ang mga manggagawa mag-block voting against the trapos So, there's no way that we could address that as an evil. I think the evil is not in block voting itself as a form of coming up with legislation. I think the evil comes with the substance, diba? The substance of the things that they're voting for, and we should defeat their positions politically. Politically, by arguing the right position, and objecting to the wrong position that will be against the interest of the majority of our people.
Good. And then along that line, Attorney, hindi po ba pwedeng mangyari sa atin dito sa bansang Pilipinas yung ginagawa sa Amerika na pag may tatakbong presidente, dalawa lang ang naglalaban? Kasi dito sa atin, 5, 6, parang nahati ang mga boto. Parang nakakahinayang na, bakit hindi na lang pagsabungin yung dalawang...
Well, again, Brother Adrian, it's just a result of the trapo or elite type of politics that we have. Ironically, the reason why maraming kandidato, maraming kandidato, and the reason is because their politics are the same. If your politics are the same, you really do not divide yourselves into two camps. You're not constrained to divide into two camps. When your politics are the same, then you will be reduced to competition along the lines of personalities. Parehas kayo Kung parehas kayong pro-business, wala kayong pag-aawayan. Ang pag-aawayan nyo na lang talaga, personality. Kaya meron tayong personality politics Pero kung ang politika natin ay hindi dominated ng mga elite, ng yung mga may pagkiling sa business. Merong kumukontra from labor. So bakbakan ngayon, magkaiba sila. Labor kontra pro-business, pro-landlord. Hindi yan maghahati-hati ang mga politicians na pro-landlord, pro-capitalist, o pro-billionaires. They will have to join together, join forces. Because there's another class force, different, that will be clashing with them. And labor will also be congregating among themselves to present a challenge to the property owners. And that will give rise to two parties.
Okay.
Because different interests are now contending against each other. Pero kung pare-parehas lang yan na pro-billionaire, lahat yan sila pro-billionaire. Yeah? Pro-property owner, lahat yan siya. Walang labor. Magpa-fragment talaga yan pagdating sa mga political parties natin dahil magpapataasan na lang ng ihi yan
Yeah.
So yun ang ironic thing about it. Unless that's changed, unless labor, for example, or the people, those that are from below, can become a political force and be able to find or establish their own party to challenge the property owners, sigurado ako, magkakaroon tayo ng two parties that will be contending for our national and local post.
Very good. Very good. Attorney, sobrang punong-puno kami at busog na busog kami sa lahat ng mga nadinig namin sa inyo. Pero hindi pa ako natatapos dito dahil meron pang isang pinaka-importanting issue na gusto namin malaman at magmula sa iyo at madinig namin ang stand po ninyo. Total, hindi pa naman ako binibigyan ng signal kung hanggang ano oras tayo matatapos. Isa sa mga malaking issue na kinaharap, lalo na kaming nasa religious sector, ay yung hatian ng state at ng church. What is your stand, Attorney Luke, of the division or the parameter between the state and the church, especially the Catholic Church?
Actually, it talks where the separation of church and state is an obligation on the state, not an obligation on the church. Kaya mali yung mali yung view na halimbawa ang Catholic Church nagsasalita about political issues. Sasabihin sila, oy, separation of church and state tayo, hindi kayo pwede magsalita. No, the Catholic Church, as any group, has the right na magsalita tungkol sa political issues.
That's right.
It is not a question of separation of church and state because the principle of separation of church and state is a burden imposed upon the state na huwag siya makialam sa reliyon. Yun eh. Non-intervention, non-establishment of religion. Huwag siyang makialam, huwag rin siyang magpabor sa kahit anong reliyon. Huwag rin siyang mag-establish, mag-sponsor ng reliyon. Obligasyon ng Estado yun. Pero yung simbahan na nagsasalita tungkol sa kung ano ang tama, especially, for example, we have Catholic priest, yung sinabi ni Gadon, na inaatake si Marcos ng mga Catholic priest. Di ba? Hindi yun violation ng church and state.
That's right.
Because the principle of separation of church and state is an obligation on the state, not an obligation on the church. The church can very well talk about the Marcos regime. It does not violate that principle.
Very good.
Any religious denomination can.
Very good. If I may also quote Bishop Sok Villegas, which he said, like, we are not bipartisan, but we will never remain neutral because the church, the religious sector should always be on the side of the truth.
You know, Brother Adrian, I could very well articulate the Catholic position. I've been a very religious person since I was a child.
Amen.
And I could very well explain that questions of morality does not, it's not left when it is on normal, ordinary issues alone. Even in politics, the guiding teachings of the church on what is moral and what is right, even there in politics, it must enter that sphere and arena. You don't limit the teachings of the church regarding that to only some issues or ordinary lives, personal lives of people. Even in society, the church has to teach about what is right, what is wrong. Even in governance, the church must teach regarding what is right and what is wrong. There is such a thing as social evil. You don't only have personal evil. There's such a thing as social sin. You don't only have personal sin. Those are the things that I would have said if I were still a catechist. And I think there are equivalents of that in other
but
areas of.
you know what, Attorney Luke, I truly believe that once the seed that has implanted in you, it remains there forever, no matter what you say.
Okay. I may have a different language right now.
Yes, but I know that
I may have a
deep
different-
within your heart and in your soul, it has been engraved in you, the seed of love and truth.
Yes. For
Yes.
example,
Grace and mercy. as
social
well.
sin, I have a different term for
Yes,
social
yes,
sin
yes, yes.
or social
Because
evil.
you have already evolved, and we have to face
Yes.
that. But I truly believe it's there forever.
And the reason why I'm like this, because I would blame people like you, Brother Adrian. Because it is people like you who have influence. I will blame the Jesuits also. I will blame my mom. My mom would always say, "Why are you an activist? I thought you were so religious before. I taught you to pray the rosary." Don't you know? It was people like you who taught me to side with the workers, to side with the oppressed, to fight for a better world, to fight for humanity.
In a different perspective.
In a different perspective,
That's
but
true.
it's still the same.
Yeah, I know.
Still the same.
I know.
Right? Love your neighbors, right?
Amen. And friends, you know what? Siguro hindi kayo sanay na ganito kalabing at kakalmado usapan namin. Gagalitin ko uli si Attorney Luke Espiritu sa aking last 2 questions sa kanya. Okay, Attorney Luke, dun po sa interview ninyo, isa pa rin sa mga trending na interviews ninyo ay yung kay Doris Bigonya na
But
sinabi...
that was long time ago.
Oh, yeah?
Hindi pa ako kilala nun.
Talaga, nakilala kay lalo doon dahil ni-replay at nag-trending lalo ito. Ang sinabi ni Doris Bigonya, kung meron genie sa harapan mo, anong i-wish mo? At anong sinabi mo? Makulong. Yung
Makulong si Duterte.
Ano po ba ang sa tingin ninyo ang pinakakasalanan nitong gusto niyong makulong sa ating bayan?
Genocide. No less than that. Crimes against humanity. Systematic killings way back in Davao. And when he already became president, is it a coincidence when he became president, naging systematic ang pagpatay sa mga suspected drug pusher and drug user? Ano to? Talagang nagkataon lang? Sabi niya, galit siya sa drugs. Sabi niya, may war on drugs. May tawag nga siya doon tukhang. Coincidence? Na nagkamatayan sa kalye, na pinatay ng mga riding in tandem, coincidence lang yon. When prior to that, wala namang ganyan. It's genocide. Crimes against humanity. It's not just murder. This guy is not just guilty of murder. Crimes against humanity.
And he's a self-confessed killer, am I right? Yes.
Oh, yes.
He has admittedly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he thinks he's above the law. This guy.
He is the law.
Is the law. There are witnesses. Matubato, Las Cañas. As a lawyer, I know, I heard, I saw it on YouTube.
Yeah.
What were the contents of their testimonies? Any lawyer would have said, that's strong evidence. Eyewitness testimony. This guy ordered the killing of this and that. Systematically, he paid his DDS. And your only explanation to that is these are more politically motivated, they are not credible. How can a person invent those details? Sira ulo ba sila, presidente ito? Mag-iimbento sila ng mga bagay-bagay? Kontrahin ito? Sira ulo ba itong mga witnesses na ito? And many of them said hindi na nila makaya sa kanilang sikmura na hindi ito lumabas. Doon pa lang Di ba?
Attorney Luke, lumabas po itong mga ebidensya, mga witnesses na to even before running for president. Paano na niya nalusutan yan at nanalo pa siya ng pagiging presidente? Kung meron naman pala siya mga
Noong
kaso.
time na yon, popular siya. Dalawa lang naman ang nagsasalita nung panahon na yun Kinulong pa yung isa. Si Laila de Lima at saka si Sunny Trillanes na hinaras din. Dalawa lang.
Na namumuro na.
Ang iba, I don't wanna name names. Ngayon, anti-Duterte na kasi lame duck na siya patapos ng term niya. Pero at that time,
that's true.
At that time, yung ibang yon ay talagang nandun sa Duterte bandwagon at dinidismiss ang mga evidence na ito. Hindi pinapalusot at hindi siniseryoso. So parang win-whitewash. Ano magagawa mo nun? Diba? Kung ikaw ang simpleng witness ka lang, ang very institution kung saan mo present ang evidence mo ay hindi naman binigyan ng diin at seriousness. Diba? Pero ngayon, yung the same people that try to whitewash the guilt of the president ay They are being called the opposition. Oh my God. What's happened to us? Di ba?
Oo. Yes, that's true.
Opposition sila ngayon.
Wow.
Di ba?
Nang malapit na, nalalapit na, their numbers are, their days are numbered.
Well, mataas sila sa kwan sa surveys
Mhm.
Kasi opposition na daw sila, di ba?
Okay.
Ganyan ang trapo system.
System.
Di ba?
Sesegue ko na rin ang susunod kong tanong, Attorney Luke. Kung makakaharap mo sa debate, kung sakasakali, si BBM, anong gusto mong sabihin sa kanya?
Hindi ko siya makakarap. Senador lang tinatakbuhan ko
Hindi. Malay mo, makaharap mo siya sa isang TV program na hindi sinabi, imbitado rin si BBM, imbitado si Attorney Luke.
I will confront him with all the figures and ask him to explain everything.
Mm.
I will confront him with his own record during the time of his father.
Mhm.
And I would ask him, if you really want to dissociate yourself from your father, could you tell us now that your father was wrong, he was a dictator, and I'm going to do things differently, and not only that, I'm going to return all the monies that have been stolen.
Mm.
If you do that, I'll vote for you.
Wow.
Sabihin ko sa kanya. I'll say that because I know he's not
Yes,
going
he
to
will
do
not
that.
do it at all.
I will be confronting him with all of these things.
Okay.
That's what I'm gonna do pag nag-debate kami.
Wow.
And wag niya ako ma-interrupt. wag niya ako ma-interrupt.
Yes. At tanggalan ka ng microphone.
At wag akong tanggalan ng microphone. Di ba?
Attorney Luke, saan ka o kanino ka gigil na makipagdebate? Among the senatorials o kahit vice president o presidente, sino talaga ang parang pinapangarap mo magkaroon ng face-to-face na debate?
Well, na-try na natin si Gadon, na-try na natin si Harry Roque, anyone, anyone among them. Sabi ko nga sa'yo, isa lang ang kinakatakutan ko. Pag nag-contest kami ni Harry Roque sa pagsayaw, hindi ko siya lalabanan. Talagang hindi ko siya lalabanan. Hindi ko kaya.
Sa kanya na.
Ikaw na mag-senador. Hindi na. Ayoko na mag-senador. Ikaw na lang.
Nakakatawa. Anyways, ito yung mga parting messages natin, Attorney Luke. As much as I really want to talk with you and ask more questions from you, I know that you are a busybody, you're a busy person. But anyways, what is your message for all the youth that are watching right now? Para sa lahat ng mga kabataan sa buong Pilipinas, ano po ang pinakamagandang mensahe po ninyo? At ano po ang maganda rin paraan siguro sa pagboto ng mga kabataan?
Naniniwala akong kabataan ay very critical, lalo na yung Gen Z at saka mga millennials.
Mhm.
Naalala ko yung unang fake news na ginawa ni Duterte ay gawing bayani si Ferdinand Marcos at nilibing niya sa libingan ng mga bayani.
Mhm.
At ang unang puwersa na lumabas sa kalye upang iprotesta yon
Mhm.
at bumulwak ang kanilang numero sa People Power Monument dyan sa EDSA ay mga kabataan, ay mga millennials at mga Gen Z.
Yes.
Kaya hindi ako naniniwala na mga kabataan ay walang kritikal na pag-iisip. There may be others na sa Gen Z o sa millennial na naniniwala sa fake news. Pero hindi ako naniniwala na yun ang magiging dominanteng kaisipan sa kabataan. Naniniwala ako sa Filipino youth, naniniwala ako sa kanilang kapasidad para labanan ng mali, at in fact, naniniwala ako na sila ang nagbibitbit ng pag-asa sa atin na lalabanan ang threat na ito ng Marcos Duterte. Pag sinasabi kong history is on our side, isa sa mga inaasahan kong mga puwersa para labanan ang mga masasama at itawid ang ating lipunan sa mas magandang sistemang panlipunan at gumawa ng kasaysayan, ang inaasahan ko ay ang kabataan. Kabataan, revolt. Revolt. Huwag niyong hahayaan na ang masama ang siyang mamamayagpag. Yan lang po.
Wow. Salamat. Pero yan, ang mensahe mo na yan ay para lamang sa kabataan. Ngayon, bibigyan kita ng isang sitwasyon. Ikaw ay nasa meeting de banse na buong Pilipino nasa harapan mo. Ano ang gusto mong sabihin sa kanila na para ikaw ay kanilang iboto?
Okay. Parati ko rin naman sinasabi ito, na ang mensahe na gusto kong ibigay ay mensahe ng hope and not despair. Hope na ang mga manggagawa ay tumindig at yakapin ang interes nila bilang uri at ipaglaban ang demokrasya. Hope na ang mga maradita ay tumindig at yakapin ang interes ng kanilang uri at ang interes ng demokrasya. Hope na mga magsasaka na yakapin ang kanilang uri at ang kanilang interes bilang magsasaka. At mula doon sa interes na yon, yakapin ang interes ng buong bayan. Kung hindi ninyo gagawin yan, kayong mga nandyan sa pinakababa ng ating social order, wala akong nakikitang pagbabago sa ating lipunan. Dahil ang pagbabago sa ating lipunan ay manggagaling lang sa inyo. Hindi maaring manggagaling yan sa taas. Hindi maaring manggagaling yan sa bilyonaryo. Hindi maaring manggagaling yan sa mga landowner at land grabber. Dahil kapag sila ang may hawak ng lipunan, status ko lang yan. At ang kanilang gustong direksyon ay yung lipunan ay ayusin papunta sa pagkamal ng matinding tubo at yung paninira nila ng kabuhayan at karapatan ng mga nasa maliit. Ang pagbabago na niniwala ako ay nandun sa baba. Kaya tumindig kayo, huwag na kayo magpaloko sa mga fake news na yan. Huwag na kayo magpaloko sa mga elite, lalong-lalo na sa elite na walang respeto sa buhay ng tao, sa elite na walang respeto sa demokrasya, sa elite na may tendensiya sa authoritarianismo, sa elite na hindi kailanman na kayo ay papakinggan. Kaya sa lahat ng mga manggagawa, magsasaka, maralita, baguhin natin ang lipunan, simulan natin ngayon to. Huwag natin papayagan ang Marcos Duterte tandem sa May 9, 2022. Yan lang po.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Luke Espiritu. We couldn't thank you enough. Hindi lang po namin na-pick up ang inyong pong kaisipan, kundi naramdaman po namin ang inyong puso at makakaasa po kayo na amin pong kayong sasamahan sa inyong journey at sasamahan din po namin ng dasal ang lahat ng inyong pong gustong mithiin sa buhay at sa gobyerno. Mabuhay po kayo, Attorney Luke Espiritu.
Maraming
Salamat po. Thank you for your
Brother
time.
Adrian.
And we're looking forward that next time that we are going to invite you, I hope this won't be the first and the last. The next time, gusto po namin, ang tawag ko na po sa inyo, hindi attorney, kundi Senator Luke
Wow,
Espiritu
salamat
na.
naman. Pwede ba pag na-stress ako kay Gadon at saka kay Harry Roque, tatambay lang ako dito?
Oh, sure.
Parang, alam mo yan,
Nako, well, this could be your second home.
pwede ba ako
Anytime.
magkaroon ng mental health break
Sure.
dito sa premises ninyo? Paupuin nyo lang ako dito.
Anytime. Mag-chill tayo, magkantahan tayo dito, magkwentuhan tayo.
Pagkatapos ko mag-mental health break, banatan uli natin sila.
Sure.
Okay.
Salamat po.
Maraming salamat.
God
Maraming
bless
salamat.
you, Brother Luke, Attorney Luke.